All right, let's talk about positive thinking. Now, for a lot of us, just hearing those two words can kind of make you cringe, right? And honestly, you're right to be skeptical. The world is just full of advice that sounds nice, but doesn't really help when you're facing real life challenges. So today, we're going to cut through all of that noise and figure out what real, practical, positive thinking actually is. Let's get into it.
This is the big question, isn't it? Is this whole concept just about, slapping a smile on your face and pretending your problems don't exist? Is it just that toxic positivity thing where people tell you to choose happiness when you're in real pain? Well, the short answer is no, not even close. The real practical version is something way, way more powerful. So before we can really dig into what positive thinking is, we have to get crystal clear about what it is not. So let's start by just tearing down the most common and, frankly, unhelpful myths that give this whole idea a bad name.
Okay, first and foremost, real positive thinking is not toxic positivity. We've all seen this stuff. It's the good vibes only sticker or someone telling you to just think positive when you've had a genuinely awful day. That approach just dismisses real feelings. It basically tells you that your struggle is somehow your own fault. And that's not just unhelpful, it's totally counterproductive, and it is absolutely not what we're talking about here.
The next myth is that it's all about denying reality. This is so crucial. If you lose your job, positive thinking isn't telling yourself, oh, whatever, I didn't need that job anyway, Or if you're going through a tough breakup, it's not about forcing yourself to believe you aren't hurt. That's not positive thinking, that's just delusion. And while positive thinking is about finding solutions, delusion is about pretending the problem doesn't even exist.
And finally, the goal is absolutely 100% not to be happy all the time. I mean, we're human. We have a full range of emotions for a reason. Sadness, anger, frustration, these aren't bad emotions. They're information. They're signals telling us that something is wrong or that something matters a whole lot to us. The goal isn't to get rid of these feelings, but to not let them completely run your life.
Okay, so we've cleared the air. We know what it isn't. It's not toxic, it's not delusional, and it's not about being some kind of happiness robot. So, what is it then? Let's build a definition that's actually practical and powerful.
Here we go. The whole core idea is wrapped up in one single word, interpreting. See, it's not about changing the facts of what happened. The facts are the facts. It's about choosing the most useful and empowering story to tell yourself about those facts. It's about you seizing control of the narrative that's playing out in your own mind.
Now this slide, this is perfect. It shows this whole idea in action. Let's say you give a big presentation at work, and it bombed. The event itself is the same, right? But just look at the two different paths your brain can take. The paralyzing interpretation on the left, that leads to shame, to avoidance. But the empowering interpretation on the right, it still acknowledges the presentation wasn't great, but it leads to growth and resilience. The facts are the same, but the outcome is completely different. This is that power of choice, right here.
And this is so crucial. This is a strategy. Think about it. In any given day, you can find evidence that you're failing and evidence that you're succeeding. You can focus on what's going wrong or you can focus on what's going right. Positive thinking is just the deliberate choice to focus your attention on what's working, what you're learning, and what's possible, without, ignoring what needs to change. It's about strategically investing your mental energy where it's actually going to give you the best return.
Okay. So it's a nice idea, choosing our interpretations. But why is this so important? Why does this one little skill have such a massive, outsized impact on our lives? Well, the answer is all about how our brains are wired.
It really comes down to this very practical loop that's happening in our heads all the time. It all starts with your thoughts. So a thought like, I'm not good enough, will trigger emotions, anxiety, maybe some insecurity, right? Well, those emotions then drive your actions. Maybe you avoid a challenge or you don't speak up in a meeting. And those actions, they create your results. In this case, maybe you miss out on a promotion. And that outcome then acts as proof, reinforcing your original thought that, see, you're not good enough. And the cycle just keeps going.
You see how that works? It's a total self-fulfilling prophecy. A negative thought can spiral right into a negative outcome. But, and this is the whole point, the reverse is also true. This is the critical moment. You can actually hijack this entire cycle and steer your life in a completely different direction, just by changing that initial thought.
And look, this isn't just some pop psychology feel-good stuff. There's real neuroscience here. It's called neuroplasticity, and all it means is that your brain physically changes based on what you repeatedly think and do.
So every single time you consciously choose an empowering interpretation over a paralyzing one, you are literally carving new pathways in your brain. You're not just wishing for a better mindset, you are actively building it, one thought at a time. It's like a path that gets wider and easier to walk down every time you use it.
And the benefits of training your brain like this? They go way beyond just feeling better. The research is super clear on this. People who practice this skill are way more resilient when they face setbacks, they're more creative, they're better problem solvers. And why? It's not because they magically have fewer problems, no way. It's because they approach every single problem with a brain that has been trained to look for solutions, not just obstacles. Their default setting becomes, okay, I can handle this.
Now, I know this all might sound like a lot of work, but getting started is actually incredibly simple. It doesn't require hours of meditation or some kind of dramatic life overhaul. Nope. It just starts with one small, manageable action.
So here is your challenge for this week. It's just 2 simple steps. First, just start noticing your internal monologue. When you make a mistake or face a setback, what's the first thing your inner voice says to you? And second, and this is the hard part, but it's the most important, do it without judgment. Don't beat yourself up for having negative thoughts. Just observe them with curiosity. Become like a scientist of your own mind, just gathering data without getting all tangled up in it.
And remember, you don't have to change anything yet. You don't have to force yourself to think differently. The simple act of just becoming aware of your default thought patterns, that is the foundation for everything else that follows. Awareness is always the first and most critical step toward making any kind of meaningful change.
Ultimately, this whole explainer really just boils down to this one question, because there will always be a story of your limitations, and there will always be a story of your potential. Positive thinking isn't about pretending that the first one doesn't exist. It's about consciously and deliberately choosing to give the second one the spotlight. So the only question left is, which one will you choose?